When billionaire Richard Hale woke up in the hospital, he couldn't feel his legs. The man who once ran global boardrooms now couldn't even lift a glass of water. His pride was shattered, replaced by bitterness and silence. "Don't touch me!" he shouted as the young maid, Elena, tried to adjust his pillow. Everyone feared him, except her. Elena wasn't afraid of his anger. She saw the pain behind it. Every morning, she greeted him softly, bringing sunlight into his sterile room. One day, when Richard refused his food again, she quietly placed a small painting on his tray, a drawing of him standing in a garden, surrounded by blooming roses. He frowned. "What is this?" "Hope," she said gently. "Sometimes you just need to see it before you can feel it." That night, for the first time in months, Richard didn't dream about his accident. He dreamed about walking again. And when he woke, he found Elena quietly wiping the window pane, humming a lullaby his late wife once sang. He stared at her, realizing, this girl wasn't just cleaning rooms, she was cleaning the sorrow he'd buried deep inside. Richard didn't know it yet, but Elena was about to do something that would break through the walls he built around his heart, and give him a reason to live again. Days turned into weeks, and Elena's quiet strength began to shift something inside Richard. He still snapped at doctors and refused visitors, but his anger toward Elena softened. She never pushed, just showed up with kindness, patience, and small acts that made him feel human again. One rainy afternoon, Richard watched her from his wheelchair as she fixed the flowers by the window. "Why do you care so much?" he muttered. "You're paid to clean, not to care." Elena turned, her eyes warm but steady. "Because people aren't stains to be wiped away, Mr. Hale. They're stories that need light." Her words hit deeper than he expected. Later that night, when no one was around, he looked at the painting she'd given him, the one where he stood tall among roses. For the first time, he wheeled himself closer to the window, gazing at the city lights. His reflection looked fragile but alive. The next morning, Elena came in with breakfast and found something surprising. Richard had tried to feed himself. The spoon had fallen to the floor, but his trembling hand still reached for it. "I made a mess," he said softly. Elena smiled. "No, sir. You made progress." She gently helped him finish eating, ignoring his tears. Every day after, she encouraged him to do one small thing: brush his hair, move his hand, speak kindly. Richard began looking forward to her visits, and the mansion that once echoed with loneliness slowly filled with laughter. But one evening, Elena didn't show up. Hours passed. For the first time, Richard felt the silence cut deep into his heart. What he discovered the next morning would completely change his life, and reveal who Elena truly was. The next morning, Richard grew restless. Elena had never missed a single day. He called the agency, but they said she hadn't reported in either. Panic settled in his chest, a feeling he hadn't known since before the accident. He ordered his driver to take him to the small neighborhood she once mentioned. When they arrived, Richard saw a rundown building and children playing outside in worn clothes. One little girl ran up, holding a crayon drawing. "You're Mr. Hale, right? Miss Elena talks about you." Richard's voice trembled. "Where is she, sweetheart?" The girl pointed to a small room on the second floor. Inside, Elena lay weak on a bed, pale but smiling faintly when she saw him. "Mr. Hale. I didn't want you to see me like this." He wheeled closer, guilt and emotion flooding his face. "You've been sick this whole time? And you still came to care for me?" Elena nodded softly. "I needed the job. But more than that, I didn't want you to give up on life like I almost did." Tears rolled down Richard's cheeks. "You saved me, Elena. You reminded me what it means to be alive." He called his doctor immediately and arranged for her treatment. For days he stayed by her side, reading, talking, sharing stories. When she regained strength, he smiled and said, "From now on, you're not just my maid. You're my friend, and my greatest teacher." Elena's eyes glistened. "Then promise me one thing, Mr. Hale. Use your second chance to help others who've lost hope." Richard squeezed her hand, whispering, I will. He didn't know it yet, but that promise would soon grow into something far greater, a foundation that would change countless lives. Months later, Richard Hale, once the paralyzed and bitter millionaire, stood on a stage in front of a crowd of journalists, doctors, and families. Behind him, a banner read, "The Elena Foundation, restoring dignity through care." His voice trembled as he spoke. "Not long ago, I was a man who had lost everything, my will to live, my hope, even my sense of worth. And then someone walked into my life who refused to see me as broken. She reminded me that kindness heals more deeply than medicine ever could." The audience listened in silence. In the front row sat Elena, now healthy, tears glistening in her eyes. Richard continued, "This foundation will fund care, training, and opportunities for caregivers who dedicate their lives to helping others, because heroes like Elena deserve to be seen, supported, and celebrated." After the event, as the crowd dispersed, Richard wheeled over to her. "You once told me that helping others gives life meaning," he said. "Now I finally understand." Elena smiled, her voice warm and proud. "And look at you now, you're helping the world." He chuckled softly. "No, we are." Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the city skyline, Richard watched children playing outside the hospital courtyard his foundation had just opened. For the first time since his accident, he felt free. He looked up and whispered to himself, "Don't touch me." The words he once barked in fear. Was really me begging someone to reach me? Now he realized someone did. Elena walked beside him and smiled. "You're not alone anymore, Mr. Hale." Richard nodded with tears in his eyes. "No, Elena, thanks to you, none of us have to be."